Us in the programme. OK, we learned during the week that the government has approved a bill requiring calories on menus. The proposals require food outlets to post the information at the point where the food is ordered. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined on the programme this morning by the No Salt chef, Brian McDermott. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Greg.
Well, you're a chef. What do you think of this proposal?
I think it can be a good thing, Greg, but I think there's a long journey between now and it actually in place in 2016. I also think it's going to be a very tough and challenging aspect of what the government want restaurants to do, because let's just take a couple of things into consideration. Firstly, this is already in place in a number of establishments, some of the bigger branded sort of fast food style of restaurants. It's there. So if you stop at that for a moment and ask yourself the question, how often do you actually check the calories of that meal that you're actually ordering? So has it had any effect so far? Arguably, no. You know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. But secondly, if we move on into sort of the restaurant trade as well, I mean, it's going to be very, very difficult, because for those guys to put a calorie count on dishes that they're creating and being innovative every day, that's the reason people go to these restaurants with the top chefs, because they're so innovative with local produce. It's going to be scientifically quite difficult for them to put a calorific value on the menu.
Well, we'll come back.
Will you go on the basis of the calorie count of a dish, or the perception of a restaurant?
Well, we'll come back to that if you don't mind. But firstly, you know, and I'm not trivialising it, but if I want to treat myself to a big greasy kebab once every now and again, or in a restaurant, if I want to have the most luxurious of desserts, do I really want to be faced with this health information when I'm giving myself a treat?
I'm not so sure you do. The other side of it as well, Greg, is that, you know, your choice, your lifestyle, your diet dependent on calories. How many people actually understand calories? You know, surely the government should take initiative to maybe have this starting point right at the other end, because remember, they're doing this to tackle obesity. We have a growing problem. We've had this problem. It's been there for 20 years. Nothing has effectively worked yet. And once again, I mean, I've continually said it, I think we're missing the key point, which is actually the cookery skills of getting people to cook and take control of their own foods, their own meal plans and all of that. The fact that you are going to see that label, you've treated yourself. Remember, your eating occasions are as follows. If you're eating out tonight, it's more than likely going to be a social eat out for an occasion. So do you want the calorific value punched through to you at that stage that you're going to say, do you know what, I'm going to leave that dessert?
Well, you know, that's the conversation that's going to be happening around the dinner table. And you know, as I say, for many of us, to get out for a meal is a treat, and a rare treat at that. And, who necessarily wants to have to sit looking at how bad something potentially could be for you? Yeah. I mean, if you were to be consuming it 3 times a day, every day.
Yeah, and I think most of us know that. I mean, I think we know if we, for example, gain a little bit of weight, it's down to very poor diet on our own behalf, on our own controllability factor of that. But again, I mean, there's different demographics of people here that we're talking about. You know, when you look at poor diet and how it affects, you know, everyone from the working class right through, most people know when they're gaining weight that it's their own fault based upon dietary and what they're eating. So we've got to take control ourselves, but initiatives like this by the government, I don't think they're quite helpful right now at the moment. And I also think that this will actually put little independent owner-operator style food businesses out of businesses.
And you make a good point earlier on as it relates to the fact that this information is already available in many, many chains. Let's take, for example, really the key area where we possibly should be focusing in terms of obesity, and that's in the young people, because we know if you're obese at a young age, it can have an effect on your health into later life. How many children or how many young adults in their lunch break are going into these fast food outlets and taking any consideration of the calorie count that's being displayed? In other words, it's about education, as you've somewhat indicated to already.
Yeah, because most of those young people, number one, they can't and they don't understand the calorific value and what it actually means. I mean, surely there's a piece of work there in us saying that if you go for a walk based on a nice pace and the weight that you are currently, you know, that you will burn off this amount of calories. I think we're starting at the wrong end. I think if that's the information that's brought through in relation to how do we burn off these calories to get into better health ourselves, and more importantly, that vital thing that continues by government to be forgotten about is the basic cookery skills of going back to proper produce, growing locally in the area, a little bit of cooking, getting control of food back into the home setting. That will lead its way back into the school. It's well supported within the primary schools. That's the dangerous age where obesity is starting to take place. It's that primary school going into secondary school. So schools are certainly doing their job. There's a piece of work to be done at the home. That needs to be encouraged by government-led initiatives, not one which is slightly scientific that could absolutely kill the food industry, the restaurant game, and I'm talking about good restaurants where you're going to go out and socially enjoy a meal this evening. You know, you have your quick service restaurants that we indicated earlier. They currently have calorific value, which tells you the amount of calories in a sandwich that you're ordering, whether it be a burger, takeaway, or any of that. You know, why are people maybe surprised to hear that they already have it? It's because they keep the information so small, they keep it so secret, and very little people will actually take a look at that, because the people that understand calorific values are likely not to be in those style of restaurants.
Well, let's get back then to the creativity, the complications maybe for a chef, and putting that to one side, even the difficulty in identifying how many calories are in any given dish, because, you know, in many cases, you're bringing ingredients from all over the place. So how do you determine a calorific count?
Well, from the chef's point of view, or from a restaurant's point of view, whether that is a cafe or a fine dining establishment this evening, for them to put a calorie count on their menu, they need to come up with a formatted recipe. Now, that means actual grams and actual weights. Then they've got to put a recommended guide in terms of the portion size. There's a couple of problems immediately there, because it depends on the style and the type of dish and the consistency of one chef changing to another chef tomorrow night. So weights and all of that will differ. So getting that piece right and putting that together is a piece of work that needs to start for them, by them now, before 2016. Then they've got to send it out to an expert to get the calorific value. There's only two ways to do that. Number one, it can be done in theory, which is a database pre-program. The likes of myself, I've just purchased that database. So, for example, I can now take anyone's recipe, providing they give me the recipe. Will chefs release the recipe? You know, they need to, if this is going to become a legal requirement.
You're talking there about a fixed menu, but what about restaurants that would have, you know, one-off specials or, you know, lunchtime specials and what have you? I mean, is the efforts going to be worth it to calculate the calories on a unique dish?
Well, in my opinion, will they gain any extra revenue as a result of having calorie values on their menu? No, I genuinely believe no. But yes, it's going to be so difficult to do that. But what I believe, without seeing any further information on this, is that they will have to take just their core menu. Mm-hmm. So, example, do their core menu. If they have a daily special on today, they can give a guide based on other dishes that have been calorific valued at that stage. So that is what I believe at the moment may be the outcome there to address the daily specials.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, that seems like a little bit of common sense. Finally, too, you know, you have different chefs that some may choose butter or other very fat-rich ingredients or calorie-rich ingredients, and others won't. Do you see a situation where on any given street it's going to be like a fight for customers via calories, and you know, maybe the taste of the food may suffer or the individual style may suffer?
I think there definitely is a place in any town that will show the calorific value and attract a certain clientele, a customer. The one that you mentioned in relation to, you know, the classical chef who was taught with the creams, the butters and the salts and all of that, you know, a simple steak, just take a favourite dish, which may be just a sirloin steak, possibly with maybe some fried onions or French fried onions, some dauphinoise potatoes and a peppered sauce. You know, there's cheese in there, there's cream, there's multiples of butter and salt. You could be looking at 1,500 you know, calorie count in there. There's no restaurant that's going to want to flag that up.
Yeah.
You know, in the event of that being possibly their best-selling product, going to zero sales. So I think this is going to be a huge challenge by the government, and I don't think it's been thought through. And again, I believe they've ignored the main problem with obesity.
Okay.
And again, that needs to go back to the retailers and the multiples as well, who are playing a huge part with the processed foods. And
I'm sure there's people listening that will feel that this is just another case of the nanny state. But for now, Brian McDermott, the no salt chef, thank you so much for joining us in the programme.
Thank you.